just time prepping. Let me get all my stuff together. I'm missing my microphone. Here we go. If you remember about what we talked about last time, we were talking about communication. Well, we're going to talk about more communication, emergency communication. Excuse me a second. See how far we can get today. There's 4 categories of emergency communication, and they're personal communication, impersonal communication, telecommunication, and coded communication. Personal communication is basically when you can see the person that you're talking to, and all this can be a bit fuzzy because technically you can Skype someone. It's a personal communication, yet telecommunication at the same time. If you can reach out and tweak their nose as they're explaining it, their shortage of ammo is personal comms. Personal communication can be both verbal and nonverbal, and there are different forms of verbal and nonverbal communications, but we'd be getting a little bit off track if we went into that. So it may seem at first that there isn't much to consider with personal communications because they're right in front of you. Well, you have to be right in front of them, and this can be difficult, for the concept's pretty simple. If you need to communicate with someone in person, you have to set up a time and a place to meet them or to talk to them. This time and place can be one event or a periodic event or even a conditional event. A one-time event is just like it sounds. It's for a purely one-time event only. You have a time and a place set up in advance. It's pretty much most of the meetings that you already do. So after you picked up the tickets to Inya, that's about how you're going to bring them the money and all that stuff. So this part of the combo plan is very communicative. It should be very clear to whomever the Inya fan is and who the details go to. So from that point, you sit down to the person you're going to discuss with, and you start a periodic event. A periodic event is, this requires the same information as above, but instead of just a one-time 9 p.m. to midnight or on Friday nights or whatever, you set up to meet them every Friday night between a certain time frame. Or you could have a conditional event, which would be one-time based like the previous ones. For example, one meeting is at a hospital when the baby's due. The same rules apply, though, if you need to set conditions when they're going to go. Which hospital, where is the hospital, and all that rest of the stuff that goes with it. Some things can be adjusted on site depending on the circumstances, but be clear in your plan what those things are really going to be. Another thing is you got to think about is an impersonal communication. And this is communicating when you and they aren't even at the same place, or at the same time, or in the simultaneous communications. If you leave a note on someone's pillow, it's impersonal communications. Pretty simple stuff. Let's say you have a friend that lives out of town and has no phone, but he drives through the same way to the bus every day. Let's also say that you're planning on having a party one Friday night pretty soon, but don't know exactly what day. If you coordinate with him in advance, you can just about look out the bus of the window and know exactly what's going to be happening. So that's sort of what the impersonal communication is you both know each other, but you're in separate locations, but you're planning an event. So that's what an impersonal communication is. You have to watch your OPSEC. Or you'll have a lot of uninvited guests. If your method of communicating is too specific, like a note on a door, everyone will know what's going on. It's a little vague, but because you didn't plan accordingly. Or someone or something may interfere with your method after the fact, so your message might not even get through. Be careful that whatever you're using for them to recognize isn't too unique or something that you haven't already acquired. If you lose or can't get a hold of somebody or a ribbon or somebody may steal it for some reason. So make sure you'll be able to accomplish the steps required to communicate. And we've already gone through all this. This is why I'm just kind of skipping through some of this stuff. So you may not know that there's an electric fence around it, or there's a sign nearby especially for forbidding you to touch it. You know, these are the types of examples, you know, I'm using, you know. So make sure that you're able to accomplish the steps required to do the communication. You know, we're talking about if you're having to put a note up on a fence post or something. Say that you're bugging out and you have to have a meeting of other people that are bugging out that don't live in your area. You may want to use these little notes to get the point to them, you know, to let them know what's going on without the whole world knowing what's going on. You know, they're sort of like code words. So make sure the person's going to be receiving the information and can actually receive it. That's what I'm talking about. Put it in a certain place every time. And it doesn't do any good if the ribbon around the tree isn't visible from the road. That's they're saying if you can't see, if it's not in plain sight, it's probably not going to be seen. That's sort of what they're talking about there. Another thing is telecommunications. For all this purpose, it's basically using communication or communication devices, and they're on the electromagnetic spectrum. Say that's like a two-way radio. Or you could also use flashing headlights, or those are traditional forms, or beating a drum like in the old days. Or tap a code, you know, you could use Morse code, you know. Sound waves is what they're calling it. So there's our ways of getting the message across, and it's all part of communications. They're saying that the cell phone is typically what's used for telecommunications, but those can be hacked. So you want to try to find something outside your spectrum to use as a communication tool. Coded communications is for the purpose of learning an emergency communication. Say you have a certain language you want to use. The way the beats are being put out, you know, like I was telling you, Morse code. So, if you don't know it, in an SHTF situation, you don't want other people to know what you're planning. You're going to be coding your communication, and you're going to be making sure that everybody within your group or a group of people that live in the vicinity know what's going on and what kind of coded communication that you're using. To communicate in code, whether it's in person, impersonal, or by telecommunicating, you should have a few coded words, and that are used in your communication plan right from the beginning. The more complicated your coding is, the more difficult it's going to be for people to understand it, especially if you like younger people or something like that, and you got them with the responsibility of decoding and whatnot. You want to make sure that they completely understand as well. So you don't want to give away the fact that you're talking in code. That's what an OPSEC indicator means. So if done properly, you should be able to communicate a message, and no one will know that you've done it. You know, so it could be a coded message. It could be a bunch of gibberish on your note or whatever you're using, or in the drum sounds that you're making, or something like that. But everybody has to know what the communication plan is. And so if you would hear two guys just over talking, and they're talking about, hey Freddie, you know, I saw that movie that we were talking about. Have you seen it yet? Yeah, I saw it the other day. You would not even have a clue what they're talking about. They're talking about a movie is going to be a meeting place. This is what they're talking about when they're talking about coded words. So it's can't think of the word right now. It's a coded word, but it's a sentence that you're just picking out certain words as meaning what they mean. Like the movie meant a meeting. So yeah, I saw it and blah blah blah. You know, that means he understands that there's going to be a meeting. So the word movie mentioned in the conversation meant they were going to come up with a meeting, and in the sentence I will mention a name, that this name will tell you what day the party's going to be on. So if he's saying, hey, we went and saw it on Wednesday, he's telling you, hey, we're going to have a party on Wednesday. So a name, you could also make it so that a name starting with F means Friday, or a name starting with S means Saturday, etc., etc. So if I ask you a question in the sentence, I'm asking you to make it to the party on a certain day. And how you respond is the answer to it. We've talked about this in other videos I put out about making sure that you have a communication. We talked about two-way radios. We've talked about all this stuff. Now we're talking about coded communication by verbal. So now that you have everything set up and everybody knows what's going on, you should actually have an actual plan. So you've got your two-way radios now. You know, you've got down to coded vocabulary. So make sure that everybody is going to know what your coded vocabulary is, so that anybody in your group could read that communication and know exactly what they're talking about. They're talking about a meeting. The meeting's going to be on Friday. Meeting's going to be at a certain place, and that's going to be a coded word as well. So these are all things that you need to know on the communication end of a SHTF situation. Another thing is make sure you have primary, alternative, contingency, and emergency words all in your vocabulary, so that if they're used, that they won't be taken out of context. Come on. Hold on, my notes jumping around. Excuse me. So, an alternate plan, if possible, should just be a viable primary plan. It should only have a very few keywords, so that there's not enough to a lot that you have to remember. And then there's contingency plans also, that where you can make up another plan from a plan. Say one is caught up on, somebody understands your vocabulary and your code words and everything, and you can jump to another plan without anybody knowing, And by the wording in the plan, they know that you've switched code words and whatnot somewhere in there. So that's sort of what I'm talking about for you guys today, is make up your contingency plans, but don't make it just for one thing like the two-way radios or the ham radios. Have other plans in place. Have a verbal plan in place, and make sure that you have your coded words in place, and that everybody in your group knows what those coded words are. Don't try to make them secret or anything, because you want everybody to be able to read those notes or whatever that are being pinned up in drop points, and they call those drop points because they always drop them in the same place. That way people know where to go and pick them up at. So you want to make sure that you have everything everyone in your group educated as to what the code words are, where the drop points are, how to read the code words. If they don't know how to read the code words, they need to write those down and get them back to somebody that can. Pretty simple stuff, you know. So basically that's all we have for today. I have some other stuff I'm going to be doing later in the week. It's going to be suggestions for your emergency communications plans. So that's going to be kind of interesting as well. I want you guys to remember that I have a live feed on Wednesday. That's going to be from 9 to 12, 9 a.m. to 12 noon, and that's going to be Mountain Standard Time. So don't forget that. And then on Saturday we have the 8 o'clock live session at night, and that's when we do the drawing from the Wednesday live stream. So it's all kind of hooked up together. As you can see, I have coded words in there, you know, that we're going to have a drawing on Saturday. So that's all I really have for you guys for today. I just wanted to go through this real fast, make sure that you understand communication doesn't definitely have to be two-way radios or a ham radio or even word of mouth, but what you could do is have you a system down for communication messages that everybody can read and have code words embedded in those notes, so that you and your group know what's going on. And that's what I have for today. So thanks for watching. You guys know I love you, and God bless you, God bless me, God bless USA. Till next time, thanks.